So, Mr. Chairman, I'll conclude. I will not be voting to confirm Judge Barrett to the Supreme Court, but I frankly think we should not be taking this vote. We should not be proceeding today. We should instead be turning to the urgent business of protecting the American people and ensuring the safety and security of our election and keeping our word. Thank you.
Senator Kennedy.
I want to associate myself with part of Senator Coons' remarks. I think I've been here less an amount of time than anybody on this committee. You are the most interesting people I've ever been around. I mean that. The Senate is. I haven't met a dummy yet. I realize that might be debatable by some. I haven't met a single solitary member of the Senate that doesn't want what's best for America. And I certainly include you in that number, Senator Coons. And I think we ought to do something about the economic consequences of the coronavirus. You know, I don't know why bad things happen to good people, but it has happened to the world. And it has had public health consequences and private health consequences, but also economic consequences. And Chris, I'm not trying to score political points here. I mean it, what I'm about to say. Senator McConnell's going to put a coronavirus bill on the floor next week. And I understand that many of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle think it's not a perfect bill. So if you'll talk to Senator Schumer, I'll talk to Senator McConnell. People on this side of the aisle that have more influence than I have can talk to Senator McConnell. Let's agree to proceed to that bill and let's debate it and start the amendment process. And let's debate and decide. I didn't come up here for delay and stultification, and you didn't even do that either, Chris. And let's go try to pass a bill next week. I think everybody on this committee tests their assumptions against the arguments of their critics. That's one of the reasons that I find you all so interesting. I'm willing to consider Democratic amendments to that bill. So let's do it. But it will require my Democratic friends to vote to proceed. So I'm asking you respectfully, vote to proceed on that bill. And then let's start amending it. And let's pass something. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Booker.
Mr. Chairman, let me apologize up front for this metaphor I'm about to use. I know it will insult the two vegans on the committee, me and Senator Cruz. But I believe...
Point of personal privilege.
Oh, I'm sorry, Senator.
That may be one step below the Houston Astros thing.
I just want the people of Texas to know the truth. He is a closet vegan. I recognize, Mr. Chairman, that this goose is pretty much cooked. And I love the body postures of all of us around when people are talking and when people are saying things very original, as Mr. Kennedy just said. Folks look up and listen, and when folks are repeating what others consider to be the routine partisan posturing, I see lots of heads go down to the cell phones. So let me try not to do anything routine with the hope that my colleagues will listen to me. First of all, just with the hearing, I do think some of the things that you said earlier are right. This was a hearing conducted with decorum and professionalism. I think that's something I think all of us can at least agree to. We had some criticisms going back and forth. I found things that were troubling to me during this hearing. I tried to elicit from, in both private conversation and in the hearing, just conversations about what I think is one of the issues that we don't speak enough about in the United States of America, which are issues of race. I have been extremely proud of the fact that we are a Senate now that has more blacks serving on it than at any time in history, and I've been really grateful to watch my Senate colleagues, often on the floor of the Senate, my colleague Tim Scott, speak about the truth about race. And literally the last time I saw him do it, get applause from his Republican colleagues about his experiences. A United States Senator, and I have my own, who has had experiences with the Capitol Police here that have been stunning, I think, to many of my colleagues to recognize this goes on. And here we are in the backdrop of what I think is, and somebody can correct me or fact check me, what I think is the largest period of demonstrations in the history of the United States, greater than any in the civil rights movement, of millions of Americans, often in predominantly, if not all white towns, coming out to protest issues of race. And I was surprised that in this backdrop, issues of race are so important to the Supreme Court that we had a nominee who couldn't even talk to a law review article that they wrote. And that's not, and I heard Senator Kennedy ask her yesterday, which made me smile, as you often do, my friend, ask her if she's a racist. Clearly, she's not a racist, nor is anybody who's serving in this committee. But it's not out of the bounds to ask questions about this, being that in the lifetime of my family, there have been members who've been affected by Supreme Court decisions in pretty profound ways. And it's issues that are going to continue to come up. I did find it also surprising. That's fair. Thank you, sir. And I did find it surprising that this conversation, and again, I'm new to this committee, and this conversation about does a nominee answer questions that reflect their philosophy. I thought there were a lot of questions that were inbounds that she refused to answer. And I think that that is the erosion of precedent that's going to continue in this committee. We are now heading to a period where the instructions that every Supreme Court nominee is going to get is just to not answer things, like to not being able to answer whether you believe in the peaceful transfer of power. I just found that stunning. I really did. I mean, I don't think we could ask anybody in the United States Senate, House members, high school history teachers, if they don't think that that's something somebody should do. So I found that surprising. But I'm not here to rehash comments I made in my opening about why I think this is wrong to do this. What I'd rather do, and Chairman, I think you're probably going to send me a note or flowers, but tomorrow will be the 7-year date to the date of when I got elected to be in the United States Senate. And thank you, Senator Kennedy. Maybe you'll be the only one that marked.
Just a congratulations be sufficient.
I appreciate that.
I mean that. And before you go on, this is pretty contentious time, and Twitter's blocking a story about Biden and the world's turning sideways and all. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, Senator Cruz. But there would be no First Steps Act if Senator Booker, at a very crucial point in time, decided to find common ground. If they ever write the history of that bill, I'll attest to the fact that when it was about to fall apart, you kept it together, you kept your eye on the prize. I just wanted to say that.
And I'm going to attest to the fact that you and other colleagues, just yesterday, after I did talk about race, had a conversation with me about the work that we can still do together on those issues. I came to the Senate, people said it was impossible for us to pass at least some of the legislation that Dick Durbin on our side really led to get things done. I'm really proud of some of the work we've done in this committee. So I just want to actually talk about that moment I came to the United States Senate. I was elected on the 16th. My dad had just died 6 days earlier. And then I came down here grieving. My staff knew right before Vice President Joe Biden swore me in to take me over to see John Lewis, which was one of the more moving moments of my life. And my mom, in tears, walks me to be sworn in on the floor of the Senate, which was Halloween, October 31st. Now, what happened about a week later was the rules of the Senate were changed, which I've heard a lot about from colleagues about breaking the Senate. Imagine me, and again, I literally was so a little bit naive to the functioning of the Senate, and this is not an exaggeration, it's the truth. I got sworn in and we had a vote, and I didn't know how to vote. I thought there was a button you pressed. I'm looking around for it, and Menendez has to tell me, just raise your hand and say aye. And so next thing you know, I have senators coming to me to lobby me about changing a rule that surprised me because the word they were using was nuclear option. And so that got my attention. Why the heck are we doing something called the nuclear option? I mean, I thought I was going to be coming here to talk about treaties to try to prevent nuclear proliferation or nuclear catastrophe. And I had senators who I really respect, people I saw as statesmen and women, coming to me and explaining to me about what they saw was the loggerhead, the chokehold that Leader McConnell was putting on the ability of Senator Obama to put executive positions and judges on. Now, I just recently heard Mitch McConnell brag about that he was able to choke the number of judges that Obama was able to put on to give President Trump a historic number of vacancies to fill. Now, I'm not actually bringing this up as a point of argument because I've listened to this hashed out, both sides claiming injury and claiming harm in this, whatever the debate is. I believe I did the right thing with my vote. But I think I have heard the grace on both sides in private conversations with people telling me that this body as a Senate and telling me that this committee is terribly broken and remarked to me that we are tumbling towards a very bad reality. And so that's what concerns me right now in this moment. That this is another moment where we are, as an institution, eroding our norms to the point that we all are bemoaning it. Everybody I have heard on both sides of the aisle bemoaning it. But this isn't happening in an isolated vacuum. It's not. It's happening in a time of terrible crisis for our country. And sometimes I walk around the halls of the Senate and I feel like we're that frog in boiling water that's been having the temperature turned up so slowly that they barely notice it and are barely remarking on it. I just want to ask my colleagues to think about what is happening in the context of American history right now. And some of you all may not agree with me, but I've had enough Republican colleagues of mine that have been willing to speak out about some of these things that are really troubling to me. I saw a president of the United States bringing in military and turning gas and rubber bullets on peaceful protesters in Lafayette Park. And for what? There are people of faith, all of us around here, to hold up a Bible in an awkward way for a photo op. That was such a stunning moment that I watched a lot of what I call statespeople in America come out strongly against it, including some people in this body on the Republican side. It pushed, as I mentioned earlier, General Mattis, who we all know it believes in the restraint of power in your voice, to come out and call the President of the United States a danger to our democracy. That is stunning. But it doesn't stop there.
It's bizarre.
I don't know if I can point, there are better students of history on this body than I am, of a president before an election doing things to compromise the outcome and saying, if I don't win, clearly, unequivocally, this election is rigged. That's something that the presidents of my lifetime, George Bush, Ronald Reagan, would never have said. And for those of you who don't think it's problematic, we have armed militias now gearing up.
Exactly.
Go to the website
Exactly.
armyoftrump.com. First of all, that worries me just because I like my conservatives, because usually pick things that we all agree on, calling organizations freedom or liberty or bringing in those words. This is the cult of a personality. Not defend the United States, not make a fair election. This is the army of Trump. And am I exaggerating when we literally are sitting here while we have people like our governor of Michigan, where people are putting together plots to abduct elected officials in the United States of America? Does this not trouble us? The things that are going on are stunning to me. A president saying stand back and stand by.
Bizarre.
To an organization that's just doing that, standing by.
Right?
We have literally, in this moment, a president refusing to unequivocally talk about the peaceful transfer of power. All of these things
Are troubling.
And I know some people want to cast them in partisan ways, but even the Constitution mentions the census and mentions the post office. Heck, both of those institutions of our democracy are under attack right now. I see these signs all around us that should make all of us concerned and worried about what's going to happen 19 days from now.
Cringe.
I never thought I would be having rational conversations with Republican colleagues of mine, far be it just members of my family, that I am fearful of the violence that might happen around an election. That I am literally having conversations on my side of the aisle with people saying, what are we going to do to protect the Poles and black communities from what happened in 1981 in New Jersey, where again, people with arms came in to try to undermine people voting. This is actually going on in America. These are real conversations by rational people. This is not partisan rhetoric. This is facts, but it happens on something deeper. And I was so moved by somebody, I texted them on the Republican side who talked about these deeper issues of our country. I really appreciate what you said, Senator Kennedy, because we do have common virtue. We do have common values. We do have common cause. The lines that divide us are not nearly as strong as the ties that bind us in this country. I still believe that. Call me earnest or call me naive, I still believe that. But right now, we are doing tit for tat. I hear people calling us extreme, when there are times I sit back. I remember in 2016 that many of my colleagues were talking about a Supreme Court seat and saying, let's just keep it open. People on this committee, let's just keep the Supreme Court open for 4 years if Hillary Clinton wins. There are things that have been going on both sides.
Right.
But while we are doing this, we are failing as a body to lead in a time of crisis.
That's right. You're
We have
broken.
food lines in America that haven't been seen since the Great Depression. We have unemployment rate in America that we haven't seen since the Great Depression. New business starts have been going down for years, and now we have small businesses closing at rates we have not seen since the Depression. Farms. I don't know if anybody heard, but I ran for president last year. And there are farms. We are seeing the closure of the independent American farms at a rate we haven't seen since farm crises in the 80s and before. Let me go more, because I know that my colleagues are concerned with this. Life expectancy in America is going down. In every other industrial nation, it's going up. You want to talk about national anxiety, rates of depression? Clinical depression are going up. Usage of antidepressants going up. There are all of these signs in this country that the great experiment in democracy on the planet Earth, on all comparison. In fact, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, you ran for president and lost, sir.
Yeah. Way behind what you were able to do.
Thank you, thank you very much.
Not even a T-shirt in my case.
But I just want to point out to you, when I came to this body from being an executive, I really was interested in data. What's the data? I had dashboards when I was mayor of my city that showed me how successful we were doing. I looked at the dashboards for America that I could find. One of them was the World Economic Forum that keeps data on the competitiveness of our democracies. We were number one in my dad's era on every one of their metrics and every one of their measures. The quality of our infrastructure, education of our children, even the research and development. We were the innovators of the planet. Well, now we're not even in the top 10 for most of their measures. China's just built 18,000 miles of high-speed rail. Have we done a major infrastructure bill? The busiest rail corridor that goes through Delaware and New Jersey from Boston to Washington, D.C. runs half an hour slower than it did in the 60s. We used to have the most college graduates per capita. We're not in the top 10 anymore. And trying to compete in the global knowledge-based economy when other countries, R&D even, we are drafting off of the investments we made. We're not the number one R&D, public-private investments in R&D country anymore, and in research intensivity. I can go on, but I want to come to this conclusion. We are failing as a body to serve the purposes to which we all care. And the best we can do is blame each other. And each of us are participating in the erosion of this body. And this is just yet another example of that. People here think this is wrong. And I'm not just saying people on our side, because again, the words of my colleagues think this is wrong. And this goose is cooked. But God, I'm appealing right now. I'm one of these folks that during times like this, maybe texting, heckling back and forth with my friends that I text on the other side of this aisle, and I hope they'll never make those public. But I'm appealing right now that we've got to find a way to stop this. The only thing that heals this body is what I call a revival of civic grace. Somewhere along the line, there's going to be a moment, it's coming, past, that there's going to be great. This body is what I call a revival of civic grace. This body is what I call a revival of civic grace. This body is what I call a revival of civic grace.
I don't know if that would be considered a spiritual awakening. I don't know if that would be in conjunction to a brand new system, because the current system is broken. I don't know what exactly that would consist of. I'm hoping that he would know what he's talking about pertaining to a revival. I know what it means on a spiritual terminology, to revive or awaken, to bring something back. I know what it means being interpreted on a spiritual level of the word revival, but I don't know what he's talking about politically. I don't know how that he would defy that. This is a scary moment, folks. This is a very, very intense, scary moment. Not just for one or two of those people inside that room right now, but this is a scary moment for all of us. Everybody who serves pertaining to our government. We are at a period right now that I have never seen before. And for me to back away and look at this and say, you know what? I don't think I want to participate in this. This looks nasty. This looks ugly. This looks wrong. And of course, whenever you judge the pretense of the pattern of what has occurred again and again and again and again throughout other administrations for the past 25 or 30 years, you start saying to yourself, maybe there is something to this, because as the psychiatric community does announce that the grounds of insanity is for a person or a body to continue to do the same thing again and again and again, expecting different results. Whenever you're no longer getting different results and you're still getting the same results, don't you think it's time to clean house? As this individual was talking about, the goose has been cooked. Now what are we going to do about it? Is the $64,000 question.
Somewhere along the line, there's going to be a moment, it's coming, I think it's long past, that there has to be acts of heroism when it comes to extending of grace. My friend Mike Lee, I quote you, the only person I'm going to personalize quote except for Kennedy, who yesterday talked about how good of a tight end I was and an athlete I was. But I'm going to quote my friend just because I know you won't take personal affront to me quoting you. You said, we had the authority to do this. I know you're a student of history, as am I. Some of the greatest acts in American history are when people had the authority to do something and they showed the restraint of power and didn't use that authority. This is one of those moments where that is the kind of grace that can stop the tumbling of this institution further towards what I think will be a real constitutional crisis.
Disaster.
And will help us to begin to rise
Disaster.
together to save this nation.
Disaster looms over this country right now. Disaster. And that's one of the reasons why that I refuse to participate in this election. Something has went wrong here whenever you continue to do the same thing again and again and again. And you're getting the same results, but you need different ones. If you can't figure that out by now, may God have mercy on you is all I got to say. Like I told somebody yesterday while I was in the YMCA, I looked at them and I said, and it was all women in there, and I looked at them and I said, I am not in the shape that I once was. I am out of shape. And one of the women looked at me. Her name's Gabby. She said, well, Lord God, if you can't see that, then you're not in your right frame of mind. Indicating that I was right about me not being in the same shape that I once was and towards me being in shape. Well, that's the whole purpose for going to the Y. Is so that maybe you can get in shape. Maybe you can help to deviate from some of the inadequacies that you've been going through pertaining to your health diminishing. Maybe. There has to be more than just a line drawn in the sand for the American people to see that disaster looms over this election in many different forms, not just in one form, but in many forms. And of course, the main form would be the violent form, the very thing that this individual is bringing to the forefront right now, pertaining to people laying wait with arms, with guns, gonna do something in the next 18 days or however many days it is to the election. It's sad that we have been pushed off into a corner as a society. As an American society, it is sad that we have been pushed off into this corner to the point of damned if you do and damned if you don't. It's almost like what Winston Churchill said about the Civil War, that it was one of the most unpreventable actions that he had ever studied of a country that had a civil war looming over its head and wasn't a darn thing that any one person could do about it. In other words, the way that things was setting themselves up towards, it was setting itself up towards that perfect storm. A perfect storm in the degree that it was no way of preventing or stopping the Civil War. And I just pray to God that we're not in that same position today that looms up over the American people's heads pertaining to a bloodbath of a democracy that is supposed to be based around the needs of the many and not the needs of the few. Whenever we get to where that we can no longer function as a democracy, as a fair, open, free democracy, that's whenever our enemies, that's whenever the people that hate us, that's whenever our adversaries go to raising their own personal eyebrows and go to scratching their own heads towards saying, you see there, your system wasn't as well equipped as what you thought it was. Now, was it? Especially if it falls over into the realm of total violence, total anarchy, another civil war. That's whenever you'll have communist-controlled countries, regardless whether it's the biggest of the big pertaining to China or the smallest of the small pertaining to Honduras. That's whenever you'll have countries that will look at us with raised eyebrows saying, we thought that y'all had the best system. A government is only as good as the people that invalidates it. And whenever you no longer have a free, open, fair government, because the people that governs that government is no longer considered legitimate, then you no longer have a legitimate government. And I'm just afraid that that's where we are right now, regardless whether it be Republican, Democrat, or even independent, that we have reached a point to where our Constitution has been outlived because it hasn't been modified, and we have reached a point as a society that we're destined for change, real change, especially whenever you're $25 trillion in debt and you have the problems looming over our heads the way that they're looming over our heads. And you can blame it on 9/11. You can blame it on the Reagan administration towards spending or the Bush administration towards spending $7 trillion on the Middle Eastern war. You can blame it on the pandemic. You can blame it on whatever. But the bottom line is the fault falls upon the feet of all of us, pertaining to us not paying close enough attention. And now we are where we are at today. There's been lots of failures of this democracy government. There's been lots of successes, but there's been lots of failures. But the main failure with this body of people over here in America is their relationships with a righteous, holy, living God. And whenever you walk away from that relationship, that's whenever God will say, enough is enough, and the sheep herder, you'll realize our sheep herders have led the sheep off into bad grazing. You know, it talks about the shepherd again and again and again. I don't know how many times. I'm pretty sure it's probably thousands of times in the Old Bible as well as the New, pertaining to the King James. Shepherdhood is leadership. Leadership comes from the top. And whenever you no longer have good, sound leadership or shepherdhood, this is where it leads people to. It leads people into pastures that they shouldn't be let off into, bad grazing. Because now the shepherd, the leader, has led the sheep off in the areas that they shouldn't have never been let off into. So it's around leadership, shepherdhood, that has put us where we are today. I am so glad that I have never ever been a part of the politics here in America. I have never wanted to throw my hat into the arena towards being a mayor. I don't even want to be voted on towards being a dog catcher. I'm so glad that that guilt does not fall upon my feet towards me being part of the people that has caused this problem. I know where the problem started. The problem started in the late 80s, mid to late 80s, during Ronald Reagan's administration, towards a group of people that didn't want to do the right thing, beginning with the White House. I know what happened. And I can validate it by proving it through either testimony or what's on paper. And I ain't talking about generated paper. I ain't talking about generated data. I'm talking about stuff, original copies of stuff that was written either in 83 or 88 or 89 or 90 or 91 or 93, 2009, 2012. Oh yeah, I've got all these proofs of the original copies towards what's occurred in my life, the whole time standing up for peace, love, and utopia, the very things that the Bible teaches for us all to be a part of. For us all to be a part of. So there's no doubt the system has been rigged. We have been sabotaged as a society here in America to the point of putting us where we are today. And I can understand this man's concerns of rather not come the election if we're going to see a major confrontation that happens either in Michigan or Wisconsin or Missouri or New York or Oregon or in other parts of this country. It's sad where we are right now as a society. It's sad, and it began, the fault fell upon the feet of those that should have done the right thing. I continue to say this again and again and again, towards 9 tapes going to the White House in 1988 that helped the Berlin Wall to fall of ending of the Cold War. If you act like a heathen, God will treat you like a heathen. And that's exactly how a great deal of the politicians has acted, previous administrations has acted, and that still are acting, some of them, towards being nothing more than pure, mere, raw heathens, being motivated by their selfish intent.
We are now at a point with what we're about to do here, unless my colleague's resolution somehow passes, where we are going to set another firm foot to the erosion of our institutions. And I'm telling you right now, I hear rational people telling me things like, first time in Supreme Court history that we had the most anti-democratic Supreme Court, because they bring up facts like, hey, this is the president wasn't elected with the majority, and confirmed by a Senate that has 10 million less votes, the majority than the minority. That these are anti-democratic things that are happening. We have to stop them. I'm hearing that. As just in the same way that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, when Hillary Clinton was seen to be the winner, were talking about trying to stop, do things to stop. What has to stop is that. I'm going to end with my favorite point, that you may have had these moments. It was in Iowa, Chuck Grassley. I was running for a stage in a town hall, and I'm about to leap up on the stage, and a big guy sees me. Mr. Chairman, I'm a big guy, former All-American football player. Older I get, the better I was, man. And I'm about to jump up on that stage, and a guy stops me and says, dude, I want you to punch Donald Trump in the face. And I looked at him deadpan, and I said, dude, that's a felony. I am nowhere near, I'm a shadow of the kind of grace that John McCain showed. When somebody was eviscerating Barack Obama personally, he grabbed the microphone from him and talked about how good of a family person Barack Obama was. Not the easy vilification that we often do. I can't imagine for the life of me the current president doing something like that. What this body has to rise to, I hope it's now, is to understand that what this nation needs from us is that grace. And I've failed in this, but this has come the moment in American history that we need to show it. I pray that my colleagues, 2 of them, will join the other 2 Republicans and stop this from happening, to show that grace now. Because this is a point when millions of Americans are suffering and hurting and losing the very idea of what it means to be an American. In terms of the dream and the promise of this country, this is the moment that this nation needs from this body actions of grace.
Thank you.
I want to weigh in again. Just this past weekend, I got a friend that lives over towards New Johnsonville that owns 3 or 4 houses. He's a renter. He was telling me about this one woman that he's been having trouble all year, that's escalated to the point that the cops got called on the renter. The cops got called on the person that owned the property because the renter had broken out a window with, I guess, a lawnmower pertaining to a rock, or that's what she claimed. Why the owner was fixing the window, the renter contacted Hopkinsville police and had the sheriff's deputy come out there and tried to get the owner arrested because the owner was griping and complaining because the tenant had not paid in the past 6 months that had already built up a bill for $2,400. Because of something that was passed with Donald Trump towards renters not being able to push people out of their houses until after January, this man's hands is tied. Even though he owns this piece of property, he can't get this tenant out of this property. And she's done racked up a bill of $2,400. 6, 12, 12, 24. I guess she must owe at least 4 months behind payment. She was trying to get this guy that owns the property arrested because he was on the property trying to repair a window, but he was voicing his opinion about how that he felt about what that she was doing. This was a Christian man, is a Christian man that owns this property. And I thought to myself, my God, it's reached a point that the owners of the property now has less control of their own property than their own tenants, even though their tenants may be behind 5, 6, 7 months. And it's almost reached that level here in America pertaining to home invasion crimes. That if you was to shoot somebody or harm somebody as they was trying to enter into your home, it has reached a point in a lot of these situations to where the homeowner or the tenant that's in control of the property actually is the one that goes to jail. Because now they have harmed the violator in some sort of way. I have never seen the system so broken. You have to look at all the elements of the system towards what's going on here and how that it leans more towards the ungodly than it does the godly. And I'm just not talking about what went on in my personal life up here with the federal court system in Paducah, Kentucky, pertaining to them wanting to give me a Class E felony for premeditated murder of killing a physical being, a being that is walking and talking by the name of Satan, Lucifer in the flesh. I'm just not talking about that. I'm talking about all these occurrences to where different things happen, just like the two people up in Missouri, I think it was Missouri, that had guns that were trying to protect their property, wound up going to jail. But yet, no, all these people can wind up on the court steps of Michigan and don't nobody do nothing to them. I have never seen a system that was so broken. You're going to put somebody in jail for the rest of their lives over a joint. I ain't talking about narcotic. I'm talking about a joint, marijuana. Yeah, they may have had more than a joint. They may have had a bail. They may have had 2 bails. They may have had 6 bails. But the fact of the matter is, you're going to put somebody in jail for life for trying to market their own black market living versus somebody that walks in and kills somebody that you only give 5 years in time. Same way with a bank. You go into a bank with a firearm, 20 years to life. Where's our priorities? According to the way that I understand the laws, our priorities, whenever you start putting more punishment on robbing a bank than you do taking an individual's life, our priorities stands around the good old American USA money. The currency, the dollar bill. And whenever our priorities exceed life in general, we have our priorities in the wrong place, folks. Whenever you can get more time for walking into a bank and robbing an armed teller with a firearm than you can by shooting and killing somebody, or a homeowner that can't even get his tenant out of his home that owes him $2,400. You got problems with the system. The system is broken whenever you have these type of occurrences. So be it as it may, you can make your own determination about voting this year on whether or not you want to participate. But I just put out a memo a while ago pertaining to a circus, that if I wanted to participate in the circus, I would join it. I don't want to join the circus. If I wanted to have anything to do with the circus, it is strictly as a spectator towards watching the circus, because I know what to expect whenever I go to visit a circus. You're going to have lions. You're going to have spectacular things. You're going to have people that breathe fire. You're going to have people that twirl around on ropes and does things that are considered abnormal or even unusual. But we're living right now in reality. But our reality, for some reason, according to the American system, has turned into a circus. And I refuse to participate by being a voter, either voting Republican or Democrat right now, because I personally feel like that the system has been flipped over into a circus. And I'm not going to bloody my hands by being a part of something that I am opposed to. I'm 59 years old. What went on out here in Weakley County in West Tennessee was totally wrong. I still can't get the people that was directly involved in calling these shots to come true pertaining to all this. I still can't get Randy Brundridge, the one that put out a hit job on me pertaining to getting me banned from all these different churches. I still can't get people to walk up and do the right thing. In the meantime, I watch innocent lives suffer from A to Z. And these people don't think that they're going to be held accountable for this. The families over in Kenton, Tennessee, that wanted to scar and mar my life simply because I was talking about the Antichrist and the one world government and the end biblical Bible prophecy events in 1983, whenever my father attacked me, whenever you still can't get vindicated by the people that participated in those activities to come clean without going and hiring a Johnny Cochran, a high-end attorney, to go after these people, you got problems. In other words, we're living in a society to where you do as I say and not as I do. You got all these cops and judges, sheriffs, sheriff deputies, people associated with the system that refuses to acknowledge any of their wrongs. The wrongs not only in Land Between the Lakes up in Kentucky, the wrongs not only pertaining to the Kentucky federal courts, but the wrongs also pertaining to the state of Tennessee as well as Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. And you think I'm going to participate in the circus? If I wanted to participate in the circus, I would join the circus. But I'm smart enough not to want to participate in the circus. So as we get further into this, whatever's going to happen to America, the fault falls upon the feet of the very people that I just got through mentioning from A to Z, beginning with the Reagans, the Bushes, etc., etc. And just like I told somebody the other day, you know, they claim that that crap runs downhill, and it does. It started at the White House, from the White House to the church house, to the church house to the schoolhouse, to the schoolhouse, all the way back down to the outhouse. Because crap runs downhill.
Senator Whitehouse, if it's okay, say whatever's on your mind. I would like to dispose of the motion. We do have people that want to give us their view about the judge. If it's okay, after Senator Whitehouse, we'll take up the vote.
Chairman, I'll try to be brief. Let me first say how surprised I am that Senator Kennedy finds us all interesting, because I've operated under the principle for many years that everybody from Louisiana is more interesting than I am. I would like to associate myself, just for the sake of time, particularly with the remarks of Senator Blumenthal, who spoke in a way that I thought was very true and eloquent, and does not need my repetition. I do want to suggest to colleagues that the rule of because we can, which is the rule that is being applied today, is one that leads away from a lot of the traditions and comedies and values that the Senate has long embodied. There are Republican members on this committee of whom I am very fond. But don't think that when you have established the rule of because we can, that should the shoe be on the other foot, you will have any credibility to come to us and say, yeah, I know you can do that, but you shouldn't because of X, Y, or Z.
I've used the very same analogy pertaining to the people being out here in the country that allows for their dogs to roam, and they keep their animals outside their house because it's basically a watchdog. And it's not that the dog is vicious, it's just that whenever the animal detects something unusual, the animal goes to barking. And ordinarily, whenever the animal goes to barking, it will awaken the master, the people that own the dog. If there's someone outside prowling around, this allows for the homeowner to identify that something strange is going on the property at night, and they usually render to it by either calling the proper authorities or they seek themselves towards investigating the situation even further. Living down here in the area that I live in, which is in a wildlife refuge center, where you have wild raccoons, squirrels, deer, etc. Being exposed to this type of lifestyle, it's pretty natural for just about every homeowner to have some sort of a firearm in case you run upon a deranged raccoon that could possibly have rabies, or you got a deer that's eating up your crops, towards taking care of what needs to be taken care of out here in the country settings, towards exterminating, euthanizing that particular animal that's doing that pertaining to wildlife. Some people in this area think that you can do the same thing to domestic animals. And I have told them before, and I'll tell them again. If you plan on being a neighbor to your neighbor, even though your neighbor's dog is roaming free, or your neighbor's dog comes roaming down your path, unless your neighbor's dog has done significant damage to your property, the best thing to do is contact your neighbor and say, hey buddy, your dog keeps getting out and it's down here doing whatever it's doing. even if it is getting into your garbage, even if it is doing something abnormal. You try to settle things on a one-on-one basis. Yeah, you got a right that you can pull out a gun and you could blast it. But wouldn't that be something to blast somebody's furry friend of some little girl or some little boy? That was the only thing that they was struggling onto towards hanging on to the existence of happiness or life in general? That you took that from them? You took their little furry friend away from them? See, just because you have the right to do it, don't make it right. That's the reason why that this individual here is saying what he's saying. Just because you have the right to do it doesn't make it right. And I hope that you can understand that from a perspective, from a legal perspective, that just because you have the right, don't make it right.
Yeah, I know you can do that, but you shouldn't because of X, Y, or Z.
Exactly.
Your credibility to make that argument at any time in the future will die in this room and on that Senate floor if you continue to proceed in this way. I hope that that is not the case, but please don't think that they're two separate rules. That when there is Republican majority, the rule is because we can, and when there is a Democrat majority, the rule is, oh no, you can't do it that way. With respect to Senator Cornyn's questions about why we are concerned, let me associate myself with the description that Senator Coons gave, which I thought was very thorough and complete. I would summarize it by saying we are concerned because of what you have said and what other senators have said in briefs and in public pledges about the Affordable Care Act, about Roe versus Wade, about Obergefell. We are concerned about these things because of what President Trump has said. The man who made the choice and told us that that choice was being made specifically to cover him in an election litigation and to terminate health coverage under the ACA. He's your president. Why should we not take him at his word? You don't answer that question. Your party platform, the Republican Party platform, calls for judges to reverse the Obamacare cases, the Affordable Care Act, that is, Roe versus Wade, and Obergefell, the gay marriage case. We didn't say that that's what your plan was. You said that that's what your plan was. And you said in your party platform that you were going to do it through your judicial appointments. That's how you reverse decisions. You put that threat in play. And I gotta say, I've got an awful lot of Rhode Islanders who depend on the Affordable Care Act. I've got a lot of Rhode Islanders who want to have some autonomy over the decisions about their body that Roe versus Wade protects. I've got a lot of Rhode Islanders who either are married to someone of their sex or wish to be and plan to be, or have friends and family members whom they love who either are married to somebody of their same sex or wish to be. So when you put those rights in play, by putting that threat in your party platform, you have no standing to criticize us for taking it seriously. That's what you said. Reverse the Obamacare cases, reverse Roe versus Wade, reverse Obergefell. The last thing that I will say is that while we express our dismay and concern about the significant and disturbing procedural anomalies that are happening in this nomination, all of the last 3 nominations have been characterized by significant and disturbing procedural anomalies. All 3. The Garland to Gorsuch episode, the Kavanaugh confirmation, and now this one. There is a commonality to that is very disturbing, and that suggests the presence of outside forces and interests that are driving these conspicuous, disturbing anomalies.
Yeah, it's called Donald Trump.
Last weekend, I was at home preparing for this and sitting at a desk with papers all out around me, trying to assemble my thoughts, and I was in a room with the windows closed. And I couldn't feel any breeze. We have pretty good windows in my house, and the wind doesn't blow through them. But I could look out the window. We look out over a pond, and I could see the water on the pond rippling as the wind blew across it. I could see the trees outside bending as the wind blew through the trees. I could see the rushes along the edges of the pond whipping back and forth as the wind blew through them. I didn't need to feel the wind to know that the wind was blowing outside, because the clues were obvious. The clues are obvious that something is happening behind all of these significant and disturbing procedural anomalies. And I, for one, intend to find out exactly what has been going on. It has been going on behind front groups and using anonymous money. That was not, I don't think, what the Founding Fathers had in mind when they stood up this robust democracy. That big sneaky interests would hide behind phony front groups and use secret money to get their way. That's not nations of Americans fought and bled. Interests would hide behind. That was not, I don't think, what the Founding Fathers had in mind when they stood up this robust democracy. That big sneaky interests would hide behind this robust democracy. That big sneaky interests would hide behind phony front groups and democracy. That big sneaky interests would hide behind phony front groups and use secret money to get their way. That's not what generations of Americans fought and bled and died for. And I make a commitment here that I will spend every effort that I must to get to the bottom of why these anomalies have taken place. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I thought the greatest anomaly I've seen was Kavanaugh, but there's no use looking backward. Let's look forward. The motion by Senator Blumenthal.
You are being played. Just like I described that to my niece yesterday on the phone in regards to her 19-year-old son that has proven to have large quantities of level of THC in his system. That you have the blind leading the blind, and because the blind is leading the blind, they're both playing on the mother's emotions or the ex-wife's feelings. And even though the son may not realize that he's doing what he's doing consciously, subconsciously, he's still falling into that same atmosphere, which is playing with mama's feelings about what's going on up on top of the hill, because they have had a lot of excitement pertaining to the boy hitting the mother, the boy breaking the collarbone on the one of the bones on the father. The boy has ransacked the house at least twice, and he's tried to catch the house on fire. Okay? They got problems. But whenever you have a father that has associated himself towards wanting to be drug-induced all his life, beginning with steroids towards trying to build his muscles up, and then going from that to marijuana to cocaine and all other types of substance drugs that didn't try to hide it from his family. And of course, within the past 4 or 5 years, he got busted not too long ago in having over $1.5 million worth of marijuana on his property, growing a whole crop. Whenever you have an atmosphere to where you have literally walked away from God and you have allowed for Satan to rise up, you're going to have consequences. And the consequences is that between the two of them, they are playing on the mother or the ex-wife's emotions. And I explained that very, very in-depthly and thoroughly to my niece out in California. And I said, what they're trying to do is riddle on your emotions to the point that they drive you over the edge. That you wind up doing something or saying something that is either inappropriate or wrong. And I said, you're not going to drive me in that same spirit of mine in that same direction. Because if I have to, I'll quit communicating with you altogether if that's what you're trying to do and you don't even realize that you're trying to do it. See, a lot of times we get overpowered with emotions. We get overpowered with the atmosphere, with the dilemma that's at hand. And we don't look deep into the motives of why it's happening. But if you'll take everything and dissect it to the point of who, what, when, and why, I guarantee you'll come up with a logical answer of why the things that are occurring are in fact occurring either in an individual's life or in a family's life or in a setting of a government's life. Once more, our according to our Bible that we read and believe in, our adversary, Lucifer, is out to kill, steal, and destroy. And he's not just out to kill, steal, and destroy one particular person's life, but he's out to kill, steal, and destroy all of our lives. He would sift us as wheat, the Bible says, if he could do it and get away with it. So yes, deciphering the who, what, when, and why is vitally important whenever it comes to the existence and the survival of us as a society. Especially whenever you're realizing that you're being played. And these dilemmas that has come up again and again and again this year alone in the Senate, the senators' atmosphere should be a strong detection of just that very thing, that they are being played. Now, the next question is the who, the what, the when, and the why. Well, once you figure out the when, well, you just mark it off. We already got it. All right. Then you go to the why. Well, why is this happening? Then you go to the who. Who started all this? The why, the when, etc., etc. You figure it out. You use common sense tactics in figuring out what's happening here. Because it's not just happening to that particular body, but it's happening to the Americans. You got people right now that are hurting. You got people right now that are looking for jobs. You got people right now that has become sick that can't work jobs. You got people right now that are on the brink of becoming homeless. You got people that are your business associates that are going broke on account of other people that can't commit to their commitments. So what is happening here? We're on a downfall, a spiraling motion going down. And if we're not smart enough to identify that and do something about that, then God have mercy on all of us, because we will continue to spiral down, and eventually it will be our Achilles heel. And our enemies, our adversaries, would love to watch America fall economically, socially, spiritually, in a pragmatic way that would be absolutely outstanding, or whatever word that I'm looking for, in the sense that even Winston Churchill would have said that there was no way out. You had been snared. In other words, you took the bait, and now you have to play the rest of the palm, or the play out. We're supposed to be some of the smartest people in the world here in America. At one time, we had the mantle. We run not second to none, but we run first to none. We was the number one leadership in the agriculture division. We was the number one division in retail and wholesale and the smokestack industry days. We was the number one in the medical. We was the number one in science. We was the number one in all these other areas. But now suddenly, it appears that it's being taken away. And it talks about the blessings that God will get tired of dealing with a people or a person, and he will take away that gift, or take away those blessings from either that person or those people. And basically, where the Bible says that it would have been better for you to have never known the ways of righteousness than for you to have known them and turned from them. And I'm just afraid that may very well be where we're at right now, as a society, as a group.
To adjourn the hearing, pass the election, is now before the Senate, and the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Grassley.
No.
Mr. Cornish. Mr. Lee.
No.
Mr. Cruz.
No.
Mr. Stein.
No.
Mr. Hawley.
No.
Mr. Tillis.
No.
Ms. Ernst. No. Mr. Crapo.
No.
Mr. Kennedy.
No.
Mrs. Blackburn. No. Mrs. Feinstein. Mr. Leahy. Mr. Durbin. Mr. Whitehouse. Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Quinn. Mr. Blumenthal.
Aye.
Ms. Hirono. Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Ms. Harris.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Chairman.
No.
Mr. Chairman, the votes are 10 yeas, 12 nays.
The motion is not agreed to. The business meeting will conclude, and we will now move to our first panel. Thanks to my colleagues for saying what was on your mind in a very eloquent way. And we'll now move on to panel one, the ABA panel.
Mr. Chairman, could I have a point of person first? Well, he's not on the panel. He's sitting behind the panel, but he's been so active there.
All right, you've been watching day 4 of the confirmation hearing process for Amy Coney Barrett. We are about to hear from the witnesses. Testimony will be provided before this all heads for a vote. It was confirmed by the chairman as this began this morning, October 22nd, 1 p.m. Bill, and it continues there on Capitol Hill.
2 hours into today, we got several hours to go. It looks like panel number 2 here will feature 2 witnesses. The second panel after that Technically, panel number 3 has 8 witnesses by name here. A few lawyers on this list, a few professors, and a judge as well, so we'll hear what they have to say about Judge Barrett and the cases before them here. I thought Booker's comment was interesting. Senator Booker, this goose is pretty much cooked. Seems to be a bit of a resignation, which is kind of how we started our program 2 hours ago with the comments from Ted Cruz suggesting that Democrats have surrendered on this nomination.
And what you just saw was an attempt by Democrats on this committee to delay this moving forward. Let's bring in Shannon Bream. Shannon, you've been watching this with us. They will now move to panel 2, where we will hear from the expert witnesses there on Capitol Hill. What do you think of what you've heard so far in that room?
I think we all heard a shift. We have been hearing that this is illegal, it's a scam, it's a sham, there's no way to move forward here. But you heard Senator Mike Lee talking about the fact that the Constitution endorses what they're doing, that a sitting president, duly elected, has nominated someone for an open seat, and the Senate is now doing its advise and consent duty. So what we now heard from the Democrats today were a number of them, and Senator Booker eloquently and in a very impassioned and lengthy speech said, you know, just because you can doesn't mean you should. We heard Senator Blumenthal say, might does not make right. And so you heard a number of the Democrats now switching over from you can't do this to you can do it, but you shouldn't. It's not good for the country. So a definite change there. Some of them asking, how did we get here? Senator Graham, who is the chairman of this committee, a Republican, said, we got here because in 2013, you guys blew up the rules and changed how circuit court judges get to the bench. You filled a number of empty seats in the D.C. circuit, and then that led us to where we are today. So the parties dug in on either side. These are party line votes. Democrats had attempted to move this confirmation out of the committee beyond the election, and Republicans said, no, we're going to do this, report her out on the 22nd. Senator Mitch McConnell saying her nomination will formally go to the floor on the 23rd. That is next Friday. There's some procedural stuff that'll have to happen, but they seem, absent any surprises, still on track to get this done before November 3rd.
I want to bring in Professor Turley just to, while we got the time here. And sir, welcome back to our coverage here. What is clear to us as we watch this, for Republicans, the ghost of Robert Bork still hangs low in this room. And I think in most recent time, the ghost of Merrick Garland does the same. I think for a lot of young Americans just watching this hearing, they don't recall what happened in the late 1980s with Robert Bork. And just give us some historical perspective for how both those cases now play out in the politics of 2020, Professor.
Well, Bork was, in many ways, the most significant modern confirmation hearing. Bork was very open about his views. He came to the committee with well-known views. But Ted Kennedy showed that you can set a narrative in the first 24 hours of a nomination. And he went straight to the floor and denounced Bork as an extremist who was far outside the mainstream. And that really stuck, partially because the White House did not respond aggressively. They were somewhat delayed. And that set in to a point that they really couldn't undo it. That changed the way confirmation fights go. Now everyone's on a hair trigger. Everyone tries to fill that first 24 to 48 hours. But in this case, you're watching something of a political kabuki show, right? Everyone knows the outcome here. It's all highly stylized movements to satisfy their respective bases. My favorite moment came when Senator Lee passionately talked about how important the Dormant Commerce Clause was to him as an individual. As a law professor, I was almost moved to tears with that level of attachment to the Dormant Commerce Clause. But otherwise, everything was as we expected it. Now, one of the sort of looming questions is whether we would have had any different result if the Democrats had this opportunity at this time and was looking at the possibility of losing the White House. After all, these are the same Democrats in 2016 who insisted that they fill this slot. And in fact, Ruth Bader Ginsburg said that she believed that the Senate had a duty to vote when a president nominates, even in the final year of an election. So you really could float down Capitol Hill on the waves of hypocrisy coming out of the Senate Judiciary Committee on both sides.
Float down the waves of hypocrisy. well stated. Thank you, sir.
So as you can see, a little activity there. They're filling back up in the room after a brief break here. But Mitch McConnell this morning confirming that he will put this nomination on the floor after a Thursday, October 22nd vote. We have the chairman and Ted Cruz speaking now. Let's listen.
In the last 2 days, we've seen a remarkable development. We have seen big tech, we've seen Twitter and Facebook actively interfering in this election in a way that has no precedent in the history of our country. Yesterday, the New York Post broke a story alleging serious corruption of Joe Biden and Hunter Biden concerning Ukraine. The allegations in the New York Post story, if true, indicate that Vice President Biden lied when he said he had never discussed his son's business dealings. That story, once the New York Post broke it, was blocked by Twitter and Facebook. Anyone who attempted to share it was prevented from sharing it on Twitter or Facebook. The New York Post itself, when it attempted to put out its story, was blocked on Twitter and Facebook. The New York Post has the 4th largest circulation of any newspaper in this country. Never before have we seen active censorship of a major press publication with serious allegations of corruption of one of the 2 candidates for president. That was last night. This morning, the story escalated and got even worse. The New York Post broke a second story of a series of emails that indicate yet more corruption, in this instance, the Biden family receiving millions of dollars from communist China government officials. Just minutes ago, I tried to share that story on Twitter. And Twitter is actively blocking, right now, this instant, stories from the New York Post alleging corruption and the Biden family receiving millions of dollars from communist China. This is election interference, and we are 19 days out from an election. It has no precedent in the history of democracy. The Senate Judiciary Committee wants to know what the hell is going on. Chairman Lindsey Graham and I have discussed this at length, and the committee today will be noticing a markup on Tuesday to issue a subpoena to Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter, to testify before the Senate Judiciary Committee next Friday, to come before this committee and the American people and explain why Twitter is abusing their corporate power to silence the press and to cover up allegations of corruption. And let me be clear, I don't know if these New York Post stories are true or not. Those are questions Vice President Biden should answer. But Twitter and Facebook and big tech billionaires don't get to censor political speech and actively interfere in the election. That's what they're doing right now. And so on Tuesday, the Judiciary Committee, the full committee, will be voting on subpoenas to subpoena Jack Dorsey to come before our committee.
I want to weigh in real quick before I end this program that I have found on YouTube, my YouTube platform, various complications in being able to put my message out to the general public based upon biased behavior coming from censorship from YouTube. I know that they're against hate mongering and calling out people pertaining to how you feel about them in a hateful, mean-spirited way. And I wouldn't put out material like that to begin with, but because I know that that material is not accepted, I do not put that material out and expect for Facebook or any other media outlook to be able to post it. But I've had censorship after censorship coming from YouTube that has not allowed for me to voice my opinion about certain things that I have put out there to the general public that I personally felt like was not acceptable. I can understand where this individual is coming from. Especially a story this big. I'm like him. I have no earthly idea if it's right, wrong, accurate, inaccurate. I just know that we're living in an age pertaining to TV, radio, satellite, internet, social media. We're living in an information age today such as we have never, ever lived in before. Ever. And because of it, it is causing that much more conflict and confusion. Because of it, some of these media players think that they have the power to dictate, which falls under the same category as a communist rule country if people are just simply voicing their opinions and they're not allowing for them to use their social media platforms in doing so. This is some more of the instability that I have talked about, that I disagree with, that is backing me away from participating in this system. Because once you realize that the system is out of order, and I'm talking about the fundamental base, the actual core of the system, of things that you know that shouldn't be run the way that they're being run, then someone such as myself has a tendency of backing off and saying, you know what? I think it would be best if I just didn't participate in this, because something bad is going to come out of all this, and whenever it does, I don't want it to slingshot back at me towards me being a part of the system. I've only voted twice in my entire life. One of the times I voted was for Al Gore. That blowed up in my face. I also voted for Bill Clinton, in which Bill Clinton got nominated the first time. I didn't help to nominate him the second time, but I did help to nominate him the first time. So I have associated my life with the system. But because of the uncertainties and because of the irregularities that I'm seeing, I refuse to participate in what's going on. Because I can foresee something horrible fixing to happen here in America unless they reverse it or change it. It's kind of like Winston Churchill. It's inevitable for it to happen. Do I want it to happen? Absolutely not. I do not want this to happen. But the road that we're on right now is a road to our Achilles heel if we don't watch.
Can I ask you a technical question on that? Can the Democrats delay that just
The Democrats can certainly raise procedural objections. They can try to delay the subpoena. I don't believe they will be successful. We are 19 days out from an election, so if the Democrats were to try to play procedural games to delay the subpoena until after the election, that would be obvious and transparently political. Chairman Graham.
Thank you. 2020 can't get any stranger. So they're 19 days out from an election. Again, I don't know if the New York Post article is true. I think it is established that Hunter Biden, while he was visiting China with the vice president, received money from a Chinese bank for investment. I don't know much more about it, but I do know this, that a lot of information, the Steele dossier, was all over the place. They never blocked that. All the allegations about Russian collusion and Trump and every other idea that Trump may have done something bad, nobody blocked that. So what we're going to do is we're going to finally have an accounting that's long overdue. These social media platforms have a dominance in our lives. They're newspapers, they're TV stations, they're radio stations, they're publishers.
Sure they do.
And this, to me, crystallizes the problem better than anything I could think of for the American people. You may be a Democrat saying, I don't want to hear the New York Post. It could be you tomorrow. So the point is that the power behind these platforms have been taken to a level that truly is dangerous, I think.
Unprecedented.
the stopping Americans who have these tools available to them from exercising their ability to share information with their friends.
Well, it changes from a tool to a weapon. You're weaponizing the very thing that is to be used as pleasurable tools, and now you've weaponized it and you've turned it into a weapon.
Nobody in Twitter and social media shut down anything about Trump and Russia. So we're going to proceed Tuesday. Hopefully the Democrats on the committee will be as interested in this as we are, because it's us today, it could be them tomorrow. Thank you.
I want to say that obviously I agree wholeheartedly with the chairman. Senator Cruz, I think taking this action is absolutely necessary. Yet last night, the subcommittee, my subcommittee on crime and terrorism, invited both Jack Dorsey and Mark Zuckerberg to come and testify. I think a subpoena from the Judiciary Committee is absolutely appropriate and in order. It is absolutely vital. We believe in a free press in this country. We also believe in free elections, and the attempt to rig an election, which is what we are seeing here by monopolies, is unprecedented in American history. They have a lot to answer for, and I hope that we'll subpoena both Twitter and Facebook. They should both come. They're both engaged in censorship. They're both massive monopolies. They should answer to the Judiciary Committee. They should answer to the full Senate. They should answer to the American people, and that's what this is about, and I look forward to taking this vote and hearing their testimony to the committee.
And you know, whenever you get to looking, I'm fixing to end right here. Whenever you get to looking at these media platforms, it should work under the same guidance of the, FDA, pertaining to what radio stations is allowed to do and say, and how far that they can go out and reach out to their viewers without stepping on somebody else's territory. There has to be some sort of dialogue in regards to regulating what they can regulate. If we can't regulate what they can regulate, then they can basically do whatever they want to do towards either posting something or not posting something. That's the issue here that they're bringing out pertaining to these social media platforms. I personally believe that they should have rules and regulations the same as any other TV station or radio station out there, that they're allowed to say this or do this. They can broadcast, in this area. They can broadcast in that area. There are, what do they call it? McDonald's can't just walk all over Burger King. Burger King can't just walk all over McDonald's. There's stipulations in. If you didn't have that, you'd have total chaos. It's patent procedures. I could open up. I personally can open up a Burger King. I could be the manager of a Burger King. If I had the money, and if I wanted to make the investment, and if I got Burger King in behind me, I could open up a Burger King. But by me opening up that Burger King, I got rules and regulations that I have to abide by depending upon where I open that Burger King up at. I've got to go by corporate rules and regulations because they are patented. Once something becomes patented, it becomes law in stone. And whenever you have all these social media platforms that are doing what they're doing, and there is no patent, then you have chaos. And I think that's what they're talking about right now that has just occurred pertaining to Facebook, Twitter, and other social media platforms that are basically just doing whatever that they want to do in whatever format that they want to do it in. And there's no rules and regulations, and because of it, it's not only turning out to be bias, it's not only turning out to be unfair, but it's actually turning out to be corruption, tainted, intentional, voting, non-privileged, law-breaking areas that need to be looked upon and possibly even punished. We're living in times like we've never lived in before. Whenever I grew up as a child, we had 3 major networks here in America: ABC, CBS, NBC. And then there was public broadcasting. Today, there's thousands of different outlets with media outlets that basically do whatever that they want to do, say whatever they want to say, and work the way that they want to work. To me, it's a Wild Wild West show. It's anarchy. And that's the reason why so much confusion has happened to the American people, because they don't know who to believe. Just as of yesterday, I was telling some people, whenever it reaches the point that you don't know what to believe and who to believe, we're in trouble as a nation. Thanks again, and good luck to all of us, and shalom to my viewers, and may God bless America. Amen.